Tonight on Bridge City News, Albertans will be going to the polls on April 16th. Our province's two main combatants explain what they'll be offering heading into the spring election. A recent internal survey discussing morale at the Lethbridge Police Department was leaked to the media, and its findings were not good news for Police Chief Rob Davis. And the Lethbridge Hurricanes will be receiving some financial compensation from the city as they head into the playoffs. We will explain why. Good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. The red has dropped and Albertans will be going to the polls on April the 16th. Premier Rachel Notley made the announcement during her recent throne speech. In it, she focused on what her government has accomplished over the past 4 years, including building schools, roads and hospitals. She also says the NDP has offered strong support for seniors, students and those in need. Notley also attacked UCP leader Jason Kenney at a Calgary rally earlier today.
If you consider yourself to be a progressive or a moderate voter, I hope to earn your support in this election campaign. We share common values and priorities, values that Jason Kenney fundamentally rejects. We are the progressive, moderate mainstream of Alberta politics and of Alberta history. We fight for our province. We fight for our energy industry without building firewalls against the rest of Canada.
The spring election will be the first for Jason Kenney and his United Conservative Party. The UCP say if they are elected, they'll eliminate the carbon tax, get more Albertans working, and fight for our province's energy sector. The UCP candidate for Lethbridge East, Nathan Newdorf, stresses that one of his main focuses leading up to Election Day will be the economy.
Whether it's getting rid of the carbon tax, which is not helping the environment and really hurting a lot of businesses, a lot of seniors, a lot of homes, because it doesn't address how an individual has to pay that extra tax. There's a job creation tax cut, there's red tape reduction, there's all of these incentives for small business, which Lethbridge East has a huge majority of small businesses, giving those owners, giving those employees a chance to get back on their feet, get back to work, hire staff again that they need because the economy is rolling. So we really want to focus on those needs for those businesses and allow them to do what they do best, which is create jobs, create opportunities for our students, whether at the college or the university, when they graduate, they have a job to go to.
Lethbridge and Medicine Hat share the lowest unemployment rates in the province at 6.2%. It appears as though there is low morale at the Lethbridge Police Department. A recent internal survey by the Lethbridge Police Association, which was leaked to the media, says Chief Rob Davis has created a toxic work environment where officers feel bullied and often intimidated. LPA President Jay McMillan says there is a lack of trust. Close to 1/3 of police say they have been bullied by Davis. Around 54% say their co-workers have also been bullied or intimidated by the Chief of Police. According to McMillan, the survey showed only 10% of LPA members felt Chief Davis was an effective and honest communicator. 12% say the chief had created a positive workplace. McMillan said around 70% of LPA members took part in the survey. Now, when it came to dealing with our city's drug crisis, only 12% believed that Davis had an effective strategy. The City of Lethbridge is holding monthly information gathering sessions to hear from local business owners on how the drug crisis has impacted them. The sessions are so the city can implement training for education and planning for safety in the downtown core.
Currently, today's session was based off the feedback from our first meeting, and people really want to just kind of know a little bit more about the facts about what's actually happening. So that's the topic for today. And going forward, we'll have some, the next two sessions will be you've had an incident, now what? As well as how you can set up your business to be more secure.
The sessions are held on the third Tuesday of every month at the Casa Art Center. Streets Alive will be hosting their second annual Sapphire Benefit Dinner. Guests will learn of new plans for faith-based life recovery programs that help fight the stigma of addiction and poverty.
The Sapphire Benefit Dinner is coming up this Saturday on March 23rd. We're really excited. This is the second year for Sapphire. And Sapphire is all about moving forward. It's all about the growth of the mission. It's all about the new programs that are coming down the pipe. It's all about our response to the community issues that are happening. And it's 100% about how we can move the mission forward and grow.
Tickets are available at the Mission or by emailing marie@streetsalive.ca. There are many addictions people struggle with today: drugs, alcohol, gambling, and even pornography. Pastor Joel Klemick is with the Southern Alberta Men's Ministry, and he says when it comes to addiction, you really need to have an accountability partner.
I think in every addiction and in every problem we have, in anything positive we're trying to do, and anything negative we're trying to overcome, if we try and do it alone, our chances of success are just so low. The more help we have, the better chances we have of actually succeeding.
Catch our full interview with Pastor Joel discussing the best way of overcoming addiction. That's coming up after business news. The Lethbridge Hurricanes will be receiving some compensation from the city for having to play some playoff games at the Nicholas Sharon Arena. The city announced that the club will be receiving $85,000 for each game played there. The Hurricanes have to vacate the much larger NMAC Centre to make way for the World Men's Curling Championships, which run March 30th through April 7th. Mayor Chris Spearman says the amended lease agreement will be beneficial for both parties. The Lethbridge Hurricanes and the City of Lethbridge also agreed to a new 15-year lease.
It's been about an 18-month process. We started out down this road to work out a new deal for the financial terms of our current 15-year lease. It's been a good experience for both sides. We've worked well. Along the way, we've had some hiccups. Obviously, with the World Curling coming in and us having to be moved out of the building, that helped encourage our negotiations a little bit.
The agreement will be reviewed every 5 years. It'll go into effect on August the 1st. The first round of the WHL playoffs will begin on Friday with the Hurricanes taking on the Calgary Hitmen. The Canadian Olympic Committee, Canadian Paralympic Committee, and On the Podium announced concussion guidelines today for high-performance athletes.
So I do think we manage concussions better than we did before, and these guidelines reflect the best evidence available today, the best approach to the problem based on the evidence that's available. And that's our expectation and our hope, that we not only have athletes who are able to compete longer, but more at a higher level and minimize the risk of long-term problems.
I think having evidence, objective evidence to show an athlete is critical and part of the management strategy. So for us to have some objective testing measures to look at neurologic dysfunction and say, geez, even though your symptoms have recovered, you may not be physiologically recovered from your injury, and we can show them that. And once they see that, it gives them relief on saying, okay, there is something wrong. It's not safe to return to sport yet. And we'll follow them along regularly with the objective criteria to say, yes, you're recovered from your injury. This boosts their confidence and allows them to get back to sport.
A Lethbridge Fitness Center owner is raising funds and awareness for mental illness in honor of her late sister. Sandra Asuchek says some of the proceeds from the event will go towards the Canadian Mental Health Association. BCN's Loris Alexander finds out how Sandra and her staff will hit the ground running on May the 5th.
This is Sandra Asuchek, the owner of a fitness center who is raising funds and awareness for mental health through a run in honor of her late sister.
My sister Rita was just a beautiful person inside and out. Very, very loving, very kind-hearted.
Sandra's sister Rita Giardetti battled depression for years, and as time wore on, life became increasingly challenging for her.
My sister's struggle started just right after the birth of her second son. In 1997 is when she gave birth to him, but a few years later is when it started to manifest itself as postpartum depression.
Rita sought help and was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, but 3 years later lost her battle with mental illness.
She struggled a lot with that and saw some medical professionals for it, saw some counselors as well, and nothing really helped her.
In her sister's memory, Asuchek and her staff are starting Rita's Run.
We are hosting our first ever run through Kinetic Indoor Cycle and Fitness. It is called Rita's Run on behalf of my sister, and our general goal is to just increase awareness and hopefully get some funds in for the Canadian Mental Health Association.
Asuchek says support from her staff for Rita's Run has been tremendous.
I'm excited to see Sandra actually fulfill this dream of hers, what she wanted to do for her sister. So I've known Sandra for a little over 4 years, and that's all she's ever kind of talked about. And so Ashley Ray, Jessica Sakamoto, and Zita all kind of got together and set this up for Sandra. So it's very exciting.
Rita's Run is a 5K or 10K walk or run that takes place on May 5th. Registration is now open through Facebook or kineticfitness.ca. For Bridge City News, I'm Loris Alexander.
So do you like to eat eggs for breakfast? New research says adults who ate 1.5 eggs daily had a higher risk of heart disease than those who ate no eggs.
So in this study of nearly 30,000 individuals, we examined the role of dietary cholesterol and its association with the development of heart disease and mortality up to 17 years later. We were interested in looking at how the amount of cholesterol that you eat in your diet is related to your long-term risk for heart disease and mortality. And we were also interested in understanding the role that specific cholesterol-containing foods, such as eggs and red meat and processed meats, contribute to your cholesterol. We actually found that any increase in the amount of eggs per day eaten was associated with an increased risk. So this was a linear increase. For every half an egg increased consumed, there was an 8% greater risk for the development of heart disease. This finding between increased dietary cholesterol and increased number of eggs that you consume with higher risk of heart disease and mortality was really consistent. So what we would recommend is that people really consume eggs in moderation. And if you consume eggs, really to reduce the amount of the yolk that you eat, which is really where that cholesterol is contained.
Federal Tory MP Candice Bergen, along with NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, say the resignation of Privy Council Clerk Michael Wernick raises more questions about the SNC-Lavalin affair. Federal Conservative leader Andrew Scheer blasted Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, saying the Liberals need to allow former Justice Minister Jody Wilson-Raybould to share more details about the SNC-Lavalin affair.
We then saw that 2 ministers resigned on principle. Then his former principal secretary, Gerald Butts, had to resign in disgrace, and today the clerk of the Privy Council had to do the exact same thing. If he wants to restore confidence, he can let the former Attorney General complete her testimony starting tomorrow at the Justice Committee.
The only job this Prime Minister is concerned about is his own. Mr. Speaker, the OECD's anti-bribery unit is concerned about political interference. And they said this scandal, quote, set all alarms sounding. For Canadians watching at home, this doesn't look any different than when the Conservatives were in power. Nope. Special access for powerful corporations, a closed door for everyone else.
A large fire at a Houston area petrochemicals terminal will likely burn for another couple of days. Officials say the focus now is preventing the fire from spreading.
Emergency responders continue to work with foam and water to control and prevent the fire from spreading. We continue to take precautions to further reduce the risk of explosion. All personnel are accounted for, and there have been no injuries to report as a result of this incident.
So we continue to monitor the air quality in and around the area. We'll pass through the report out after this adjourns. As of right now, everything is still within acceptable levels.
From fire to water, flooding in Nebraska has badly damaged up to 500 homes in one county alone. Stranded residents in Fremont were being flown out by volunteer pilots who brought them to safe, dry land in Omaha.
These guys that are pilots, God bless them, they're angels. To go home feels good. I want to go home, kind of get myself together, and then go help people.
Hey guys, run some stuff out to the Centurion down here.
I'm from Fremont, so I wanted to help out. My parents are actually stranded here in Omaha, and just want to do anything we could to help out.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Fremont's landlocked, and they're running out of food, and I think everyone needs to do what they can to help out. And I had an airplane that was sitting in a hangar that had gas in it, so I was just more than happy to help.
Fighting continued today in the Syrian village of Baghouz. It's the last Islamic State-held region in the country, which was once called an Islamic Caliphate. A spokesperson says U.S.-backed forces took control of an encampment that ISIS extremists have held for many months. The Syrian Democratic Forces say clashes continue, however, in many parts of eastern Syria where ISIS militants continue to fight back. I recently asked our ISIS expert Lisa Daftari if we will eventually see peace in the Middle East. Lisa says not as long as the ideology exists that Israel must be eradicated.
So until this narrative is erased from the Palestinian leadership that Israel has to be driven into the sea, then we're not going to get anywhere. And unfortunately, this has made its way into the United States Congress as well. We have individuals within the United States Congress that echo the sentiments of the Palestinian terror leadership that want to drive Israel off the map.
Catch my full interview with Lisa Daftari as we also discuss why North Korea is now doing more ballistic missile testing. That's coming up in the second half of our show. Aid workers say rapidly rising floodwaters have created an inland ocean in Mozambique, endangering tens of thousands of families. Rescue workers are scrambling to rescue survivors of a cyclone who were clinging to rooftops and trees. Emergency workers dealing with the most destructive flooding in 20 years say heavy rains are expected to continue through Thursday. It was on this day that the U.S. launched an attack on Baghdad. Televangelist Jim Bakker quits the ministry due to a scandal, and Bob Dylan's debut album is released. This is Today in History for March the 19th.
March 19th, 2003. For the second time in a dozen years, an American-led coalition launches a war against Iraq. Cruise missiles and precision-guided bombs are aimed at Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein near the capital, Baghdad. President George W. Bush tells the American people,
"The people of the United States and our friends and allies will not live at the mercy of an outlaw regime that threatens the peace with weapons of mass murder."
1987. Televangelist Jim Bakker quits as head of his PTL ministry. He steps down amid a sex and money scandal involving Jessica Hahn, a former church secretary. Bakker later serves 5 years in federal prison for using his TV show to defraud his followers. 1931. Nevada legalizes casino gambling, a move that puts Las Vegas on the map as America's gambling capital. And 1962.
Rambling out of the Wild West, leaving the towns I love the best. Thought I'd seen some ups and downs till I come into New York town.
Bob Dylan's self-titled debut album is released. The singer-songwriter is just 20 years old at the time. Today in History, March 19th. Ross Simpson, The Associated Press.
Now here's a story ranchers will get a kick out of. New York City police officers had to wrangle a cow that became loose today on a busy highway in the Bronx. Local media reports that it was unclear how the bovine got onto the road. Officials say the cow was unharmed and will eventually be taken into an animal sanctuary. It's nice to see. Lots of sunshine and warm temperatures again today. It'll feel even warmer tomorrow. Complete weather details are coming up. The first official day of spring is tomorrow, but it felt a lot like spring today, didn't it? Tonight, mainly clear with a low near zero. Sunny and warm again tomorrow with a high expected near 17. Slightly cooler on Thursday and Friday with a daytime high near 14. A nice weekend is shaping up. Sunny and 14 for Saturday, just a few clouds to 12 degrees on Sunday. Monday, a high pressure system returns, clearing out the clouds, bringing us lots of sunshine and a high near 13. Checking the almanac, the average high for this time of year is 6 degrees and an average low of -6. The highest temperature on this date was recorded in 2007 at 18 degrees, and the record low was -21 in 1958. Sunrise at 7:37, sunset at 7:41. Looking at tomorrow's national temperatures now, Vancouver will be mainly sunny and 15, sunshine and 16 is on tap for Victoria. Even warmer in Calgary on Wednesday, sunshine and 18 degrees is expected. Sunny and 16 for Edmonton. Regina and Saskatoon will be mainly sunny as well and 9 degrees. Just a few clouds and 5 for Winnipeg tomorrow. Mainly cloudy and 10 degrees for Toronto. Lots of clouds and 7 for Ottawa. It'll be mainly sunny and 8 degrees in Montreal. In the Maritimes, Fredericton, New Brunswick will be mainly sunny and 5. Halifax, Nova Scotia will be partly cloudy and 4. Charlottetown, PEI will be mainly sunny and 2. And in St. John's, Newfoundland, expect light flurries and a high of only -1 for tomorrow. Federal Finance Minister Bill Morneau is about to deliver his final budget before the fall election. He's expected to tout the Liberals' economic record and unveil pre-election goodies to help seniors, first-time home buyers, and adults who want to go back to school for skills training. Expect Morneau to argue that years of deficit spending have put the economy on a stronger footing. He also says the Liberals' enhanced child benefit has put the poverty level at its lowest in 10 years. A pair of federal cabinet ministers have been called to testify before a parliamentary committee on China's move to reject canola shipments from one of Canada's largest grain producers. The House of Commons Trade Committee voted to hear from Agriculture Minister Marie-Claude Bebeau and International Trade Minister Jim Carr during the first week of April. Beijing has suspended canola imports from Richardson International for what one Chinese official said was the detection of hazardous organisms in the company's product. Carr recently said Canada is pushing to resolve the matter, but added that China has yet to provide evidence to back up the claims. Agriculture Minister Marie-Claude Bebeau announced $31 million in funding to increase the number of detector dogs at airports to sniff out illegal imported meat products from entering Canada. The funding will allow for 24 extra dog teams over 5 years, bringing the total to 39. The ministry says illegally imported meat products from countries affected by African swine fever present one of the greatest risks of introducing animal disease to Canada. The disease continues to spread in Europe and Asia. Fortunately, it has not yet hit our country. Canada will host the International African Swine Fever Forum April 30th to May 1st in Ottawa. Air Canada's fleet of Boeing 737 MAX 8 jets won't be back in the air until at least July 1st. The airline made the announcement today saying it wants to provide more certainty for passengers who are looking at booking flights over the next few months. Air Canada says its schedule has been adjusted to the end of April. Airlines around the world have been working to redeploy their fleets since MAX 8s were grounded following the Ethiopian Airlines crash. A new report has been released looking at the health and disability insurance available to Canadian farmers. The report by the Canadian Agricultural Safety Association was commissioned to gain a better understanding of what insurance farmers can access and to identify any gaps. The report found the uptake of the provincial health insurance to be low. Only 1 to 5% of members utilized it. The report also notes that mental health coverage insurance is an unmet need. Also, the disability plans and workers' compensation plans may have limitations for farmers. Now, here's a look at today's markets. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, the rent has dropped and Albertans will be heading to the polls on April 16th. Premier Rachel Notley made the announcement during a recent throne speech. In it, she focused on what her government has accomplished over the past 4 years, including building schools, roads, and hospitals. Jason Kenney says if the UCP is elected, they'll focus on eliminating the carbon tax, giving small businesses tax breaks, and fighting for the energy sector. It seems like the U.S. and North Korea may not be getting any closer to a nuclear deal. Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari joins us from LA next with the details. But first, here's a look at what's happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. Redemption Prison Ministry is holding a fundraising dinner Thursday, March 21st at Trinity Reformed Church in Lethbridge, with doors opening at 6 p.m. Come for a delicious dinner and discover what God is doing in the prisons through this amazing ministry. Please RSVP by Monday, March 18th by calling Chris at 403-317-3950 or email chrisv@trinityurc.ca. Stockfest 2019 is a benefit event supporting the Lethbridge Football Club and Kids Sport on Saturday, March 23rd at the Service Sports Center. Enjoy live music by the Bamboo Guppies, silent and live auctions, a 50-50 draw, and much more. Tickets are $20 in advance or $25 at the door. Purchase yours today by calling the Lethbridge Soccer Association at 403-320-5425. Blankets for Canada Lethbridge meets Thursdays from 10 a.m. to noon at Southminster United Church. Share your knitting and crocheting skills to keep those who are in need in our community warm. Donations of yarn and financial gifts are greatly appreciated and can be dropped off at the church. For more information, visit blanketsforcanada.ca or call 403-329-6586. And that's your Bridge City News Community Calendar.
The opioid crisis continues in many cities around the world, including right here in Lethbridge. In the United States, it seems that methamphetamines are flooding into many states. Joining me now to talk about this and other big issues from around the globe is our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, joining me from Los Angeles. Lisa, according to the Wall Street Journal, the meth issue is getting out of hand.
Yes, so this in the larger landscape of the overall war on drugs being quite successful. So the other numbers are down, but meth seems to be skyrocketing, and this is coming in through Mexico and hitting areas where before there was not such an issue, like the Northeast. The difference, obviously, with meth and other narcotics is that it is produced in a lab. It's not something that you have to wait for the harvest. You don't have to, wait for it to be planted, and the government cannot crack down on the field. So in Colombia, for example, in parts of Mexico, you have initiatives where the government subsidizes your land in exchange for you to stop growing narcotics. But with meth, you don't have that control. Obviously, these are private labs. It's very lucrative, and it's being pushed right into the United States. So it's a very popular drug, and unfortunately, they will have to begin to crack down on this as well and pinpoint this.
U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton hammered North Korea over the weekend. Lisa, Bolton says Kim Jong-un is unwilling to take the necessary steps to reach a nuclear deal with the United States. North Korea is actually considering doing more ballistic missile testing?
That's right. So John Bolton here just pointing out the elephant in the room. This is really the reason why the two sides have not been able to come to some sort of resolution or make some sort of headway in the negotiations, despite meeting 2 times in the historic meetings between Kim Jong-un and President Trump. Both sides are waiting for the other one to make the first concession. Will the United States drop the sanctions first, or will the North Koreans show some sign of denuclearization, or at least show some promising signs or a timeline of how they will denuclearize? So now John Bolton is saying when the North Koreans last week said that they would begin missile tests once again, this is a very, very poor sign for the nature of the talks going forward and the ability to come together for some sort of resolution. So I think we're going to have to see some sort of compromise by the North Koreans, despite the fact that we've allowed them to play out the clock, despite the fact that we've been patient with them. Both Trump and Pompeo and Bolton in the past have said this is not going to be something that happens overnight. But despite the fact, they believe now, it seems, that we're not even moving in the right direction.
The eyes of the world are currently watching to see if the United States and China can finally reach a trade deal, where it is enforcement is the key to ensuring the Chinese government keeps its promises. Now, how will the Trump administration go about doing that?
Right. This is going to become very difficult because nowadays, in the case of warfare across the board, it's very difficult to watch our enemies. Why? Because it's mostly on cyber, whether it's cyber terrorism or cyber espionage or the stealing of our secrets through emails or through patents, through tech and industry secrets. And this is what the Chinese has been notorious for. So in the case of the Chinese, we have allowed them, obviously, to take advantage of markets, but more so in the past decade, they have gotten ahead through stealing these types of secrets. So enforcement will be the key to watch them to not steal this intellectual property to get ahead. What they seem to do so well, whether it's in drones or weapons or computer software or phone software, is to steal these secrets and then be able to produce it much more cheaply for the world market. So this is something we'll have to watch and keep a tight eye on them.
The problems continue in Maduro's Venezuela. Lisa, now there's talk of more corruption, but this time involving Cuban doctors to coerce Venezuelan voters. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, this is an awful story when you read about this through the lens of a doctor, and this is just one anecdote, but it's obviously repeated over and over again, about what Maduro did in the lead up to his May elections by flooding the country with doctors. And as we know, there is a shortage of medical care, pharmaceuticals, oxygen, cancer treatments, etc. in the country, just as there is with all the other basic necessities like food. And what he did was flood the country with these doctors, but the doctors were not allowed to give treatment. What they had to do was wait until that brink or that cutting point where people needed the oxygen or whatever treatment so badly that it would be in exchange for a vote, so that Maduro can win the election. And this, I mean, these accounts are just so gut-wrenching. And to think that this dictator, I mean, somebody who burns humanitarian aid on the way to people who need it, his constituents who need it so badly and are starving the streets of Venezuela, of course he would be very much capable of doing such a thing. But when you read the details of these horrific accounts, it's really bone-chilling.
Here in Alberta, we rely heavily on the energy sector. Oil and gas is a big part of who we are and getting more pipelines built so we can get our oil to market. In Iran, which also relies heavily on oil, that country is blaming the United States for market tensions.
Yes. So finally, the United States got it right in the sense that the sanctions on the oil industry, which are meant to be very, very targeted sanctions that affect mostly the government of Iran and not so much the people of Iran, as we were seeing in the past, this is where they are suffering, and the numbers show that they are suffering. They are looking to sue the United States over sanctions placed on their government. That's the latest news out of Iran just today. But obviously, it's effective, and I think that is the major takeaway here: that sanctions work, that economic penalties work, and that is the best way to employ this diplomacy over a rogue regime like the Iranian regime.
The Yellow Vest protests are simply getting out of hand. I mean, we've seen the visuals here with Bridge City News. You've seen them as well, Lisa. There were another 100 protesters arrested recently. Lots of violence, damage, and looting going on. French President Macron says he's going to be cracking down. But when?
Yes, I spoke to actually a French source over the weekend, and he said it exactly the way you set it up, Hal, that this happens every weekend. It just happens every weekend. It's just something that is continuous. It's not as effective on either side anymore because it just is going on and on. And, you know, it seems pretty much contained in the sense that it's not growing. It's not gaining any momentum with regards to its political message. And I think that when a lot of these different grievances got mixed into it, it lost its core agenda, and it lost a lot of those initial supporters of the protests. So you have this, you know, muck of a mixture of individuals who are disenchanted with different parts of society, with very different political points of view, actually. And Macron, of course, this is going to be, you know, his Achilles heel for now, but it doesn't seem like he is too troubled by it, or perhaps he just can't go any harder because then it will implode. So I think he's okay with it just maybe fizzling out, and it seems that that's the direction it's going to go into.
Now, speaking of protests, the UN Mideast envoy is condemning the Hamas crackdown on street protests. Tell me more about that.
This is a wonderful story. This is something that I actually reported on in 2014, and that is namely to look away from the Israeli-Palestinian crisis and to look more closely at the disenchantment of the Palestinians towards their own leadership, Hamas. Meaning, the specific story that I remember doing was with an interview with a father whose 4-year-old daughter had smoke inhalation from a missile that was sent into Gaza by the Israelis. And when I interviewed this man, you'd think he'd be so upset and mad at Israelis, and it creates, more of this animosity between the two sides. And he said, let me correct you. We're actually not mad at the Israelis. We're mad at Hamas, our leadership that failed us. And I think that these protests that have sprung up again after 5 years just show you, that everyday life under the Palestinian leadership is very different from everyday life under Israeli leadership. And you have Arabs who live under Israeli rule and are very happy and are treated very well and live in a sovereign nation. But for the Palestinians, the way of life that's taught is a very pro-terrorist, very, you owe Hamas, your life is basically owed to a terror organization. And that is no way to live, to teach your children to hate and to throw rocks and to be unemployed and to play this victim mindset. And as you know, the headlines have been going back and forth over the last week or so with Hamas in Gaza lodging missiles into Tel Aviv. And then there was a murder of 2 individuals in the West Bank yesterday. So this continues and it continues and it continues. But what the world media is missing is this story, in fact, about the Palestinians being mad at their own leadership, being led by a terror organization. It's not tit for tat. It's not Israel against another nation. It's Israel against a terror organization. And let us hear the story from the mouths of their own people, the Palestinian people, who are mad at their leadership, Hamas.
Lisa, you've covered the Middle East stories for a long time now. You've been to the Middle East as well. You've talked to other journalists in and around the region. What will it take for us to actually finally see peace in the Middle East?
Yeah, it's going to be very, very, very difficult. Almost every option has come and gone on the table, right? So there's been offers of land and there's been offers of treaties, and none of that has remained as a viable option. Yasser Arafat and Yitzhak Rabin got Nobel Prizes on the White House lawn under the watch of Bill Clinton. And, months later, we went right back to the same story and the same narrative and the same killing of innocent people. So until this narrative is erased from the Palestinian leadership that Israel has to be driven into the sea, then we're not going to get anywhere. And unfortunately, this has made its way into the United States Congress as well. We have individuals within the United States Congress that echo the sentiments of the Palestinian terror leadership that want to drive Israel off the map. So until we get rid of this mindset, there is no way for the two sides to live in peace. When you think that the other side should not exist, how are you going to be a partner in creating that existence between the two sides?
It's a battle, a war that's been going on for thousands of years. Lisa, the Boeing 737 MAX 8 aircraft has been banned from flying in many airspaces around the world, including right here in Canada, and I know in the United States as well, where you are. What have we learned so far with the similarities between the Ethiopian air crash, which killed 157, including 18 Canadians, and the Lion Air Indonesian crash last October, which claimed 189 lives?
Yes, so it seems like the main similarities that the reports have come back, well, they've come back basically saying that there are similarities, meaning that we can call this a similar crash. And the main characteristics are the fluctuation in altitude and the very erratic path that the plane took before crashing. So that makes a lot of sense in the way that it went down, the way that it crashed, the way that the plane malfunctioned. Now, also, other reports are showing basically the lacking of the 737 in training pilots correctly. From what I'm reading, a lot of these pilots were trained to go from one plane to the 737 on an iPad. That's where they would pass or kind of get their training for this kind of a flight, just to make it easier on the pilots, to make it very low maintenance. You can go from one plane to this plane very easily. So I think as time goes by, they're going to be very, very meticulous at looking at the shortcomings of this plane and how it's caused so many problems. And I'm glad that Canada and the U.S., even though they were the last ones to hold out, they did ground these flights. Obviously not something that people, any nation wants to do in kind of limiting its air traffic or limiting business or any company from doing its job, but this is safety, and safety is first and foremost, obviously.
And you know what's interesting too, the aviation experts that we've talked to on BCN basically said that they're more fuel efficient, these new 737 MAX 8s, because the engines are further forward as well, but that also impacts the flight pattern and the power of these aircraft, and the pilots are just not equipped or well trained, like you said, to handle these airplanes.
Right, it's unbelievable.
It is. Our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, joining me once again from Los Angeles. Thanks so much, Lisa.
My pleasure.
It seems that men and women today face some pretty heavy challenges. Today we're going to focus more on some of the big challenges men are facing and how they can overcome them. Joining me at the desk is Pastor Joel Klemick, who's with the Mid-City Church in Lethbridge. Welcome to Bridge City News, Pastor Joel.
Great to be here with you.
So Sam, Southern Alberta Men's Ministry, what is it all about?
Well, it's an interfaith group of guys from different churches around Southern Alberta. They've come together to create opportunities, events for men of all denominations, no faith, some faith, to come together and be equipped in their faith journey to fully realize their potential, who they are.
How about the age groups too? Is it more geared towards the more mature guys, or how about some of the younger guys? Can they also get involved?
It's a really widespread. We've got teenagers that come and be a part of things, all the way up to some of the old guys, really senior in their years, senior in their faith, that have a lot to offer the upcoming generations.
That's good. Maybe be mentors to them along the way, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, you've got a big conference coming up this Friday and Saturday. Let's chit-chat a bit about that. And I'm fortunate enough to be your MC too.
Yeah,
Looking
we're
forward to that.
excited to have you there. The
That'll be
Testify
fun.
Conference, we're hosting it at the Mid-City Church this year. They have it at a different church in the city every year. And this year the theme is Testify, Why We Believe. And some of the cultural conversation around masculinity in our day, our age, is really complicated. We're hearing about toxic masculinity. We're talking about male privilege, and especially white male privilege. It can seem harder and harder to be a guy. The issues, like you said, are getting heavy. And more, men and their voices, it seems, are being pushed to the periphery in a lot of different ways. And so our conviction is that more than ever, men's voices need to be heard in positive ways that contribute in positive ways to the cultural conversation, everything that's going on, that more than ever we need good role models, we need good examples from our men. And so this is a great chance to say, men, you belong, you're important, we want to help you make your life, your voice count.
You know, what's interesting, Pastor Joel, is I grew up in a household where I was taught chivalry for the ladies, pull the chair out, open the door for them.
Yeah.
Well, I was actually attacked on social media recently saying that I was very chivalrous, and I did this because some of the feminists who were out there were attacking me, saying that I'm oppressing them by doing this. And I'm like, no, I'm just trying to be a gentleman. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it gets more and more complicated. Where is a healthy place and a helpful place for men to serve and to be still men in culture? And those are the kinds of things we want to talk about. Men, we need you just as much as ever, but even as we create space for women and the complexities that the gender conversation has this day. Issues like chivalry, they're still have a place. They have a role when talking about family and how we treat each other.
With love and respect, right?
With love and respect. And I guess if it's not helpful, if it's not received helpfully, then it isn't perceived as love or as respect. And so then we need to still be a part of what's going on. How do we contribute in ways that make a difference, that really honor who we are?
A lot of men today battle sexual addictions, pornography, whether it's online or even still with magazines today. How much of a problem is that for guys today, including Christian men?
Well, I think it's been a problem for as long as men and women have existed. Sexual temptation has been a problem throughout history. Every generation, every culture has struggled with it. That's why even the Bible, which is thousands of years old, is talking about the issue. Today, I think the problem is unique in that issues like social media, the media in general, and especially the internet, has just increased access to it. And then part of the other piece of that is just how common it's become to consume pornographic content. It's become normal, it seems, seemingly normal to consume pornography.
How difficult is it for a man to maybe ask for help? Maybe he's shameful, there's a little bit of pride involved. And where does he go for that help?
Well, as you know, it can be hard to ask for help with anything for a lot of men. And so especially with a problem like this that can be cloaked in shame and guilt, and there's so much complexity around it. But until you ask for help, you won't get any. And so it is so important to find a safe place and a safe person to talk to. And so definitely, as a pastor, I think pastors are great resources to be able to talk to somebody someone who might serve in your life as a mentor, someone you can trust, who you know you're safe with, you can be vulnerable. But it's just one of those things, until you bring it out of the shadows into the light, there's no way to get help for it. So it's so important to find
So first of all, you have to admit you have a problem. That's the first step, isn't it?
First step, just like any of the 12-step programs, you just have to admit that your life has become manageable in that area. And once you've admitted it, then you can begin to seek the help you need.
And everybody has a different rock bottom, don't they?
Everybody has a different rock bottom.
Like you say to
That's
your buddy,
perfect.
you know what, you probably shouldn't be watching that, or you shouldn't be doing that. But it's like, you just wait. You know?
Right.
So, I mean, everybody's got their own rock bottom. And do we just stand idly by and let them hit rock bottom? Or do we kind of encourage them and say, look, you shouldn't be going down this path?
Well, it's tough, because I think it is different for every person. It isn't until the person is ready to receive help that you can offer help that will be received. So J.K. Rowling, she has that great quote, "I found that rock bottom is a great place to start building again."
Oh, good.
So whenever it is that you hit rock bottom, there you can start building.
Nowhere to go but up, right?
Nowhere to go but up, but of course the drop can be painful.
Right. How about an accountability partner? How important is that for a lot of addictions that men are facing today?
I think in every addiction and in every problem we have, in anything positive we're trying to do, and anything negative we're trying to overcome, if we try and do it alone, our chances of success are just so low. The more help we have, the better chances we have of actually succeeding. And so accountability is such an important piece, and it has to be, again, somebody you can trust, somebody that you can be vulnerable with and be honest with. You can only grow as much as you're able to be honest about what you're really struggling with. But without that accountability, without that person, that positive influence in you that is pushing you forward, even when you've tripped backward, you just won't make it.
How about for some of these men that work a little too much? They become workaholics, and there's that healthy balance between family and work. What do you say to them?
Well, I think the drive to want to provide, to want to go out to work and bring home the bacon, as the saying goes, for your family, that's excellent. We want to affirm that. We have just as much, I think, happening where there are people that don't have the drive to work.
They don't have that ambition, right?
Exactly, yes. We want to be able to affirm that ambition and yet make sure the right boundaries are around it. I think that part of the problem is that at work, when you go and you perform, we're always being evaluated according to our performance. So when we get that positive feedback for what we do produce, what we do contribute, then we want to keep pursuing that. You hold that against the home, where sometimes things are complicated. The emotional engagement is complicated. To be available to your kids and available to a spouse, it can be hard, and there isn't all that positive reinforcement coming back at you telling you're doing a good job. You don't get a paycheck for that part of it. So it's easy to put your energy where at least it gets rewarded.
I think of that song, The Cat's in the Cradle. It was Harry Chapin.
Yeah.
When are you going to spend time with me? Well, I'll spend time with you, Dad. I want to be just like you, Dad. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And of course, like you said, some of the conversations around balance. How do you balance these things out? And I think it's actually the wrong question. Balance sort of implies that all things have to maintain equal tension on them. And so when I talk about this with guys, it's usually the question is, how is the right rhythm? How do you fully engage at work when you're at work? And then how do you turn that off and be fully available, fully engaged in the home with your kids, with your spouse, whatever the situation is. So really, what is the right rhythm to things?
How important is that to be there for the children as they're growing up? Have that male influence in their lives?
Oh yeah, of course. We just know that how important it is to have both parents part of a child's life, part of their formation, part of their development, that we need their fathers contributing positively to who they are, their identity.
Because many fathers have hit the road.
Yeah, and of course, there's blended families of all kinds these days, and it gets more and more complicated. But of course, the opportunity there is you have more positive influence in your child's life if you do it well. But they need all of them. It takes a village to raise a child, as the proverb goes.
What about men that are not really the spiritual head of their family, but they want to be? A lot of times mom's picking up the slack, mom's opening the Bible and teaching the kids about some scripture and, strong morals and values, but maybe dad's not really there for their child as much. So how important is that for maybe to have that male influence as well?
Well, I think it is crucial, or else the kids are likely to repeat the father's pattern. And I think part of the problem is that often issues around church or spirituality, whatever the faith is, that you're singing love songs about God, and often these things can seem like weakness or feminine, and so men tend to disengage. And of course, all that does is guarantee that the next generation will be less engaged also. So it's finding ways for men to be engaged, and I think that honors their masculinity.
What advice would you give to men, Pastor Joel, who are maybe a little scared about doing devotions and praying with their family and their kids?
Yeah, I'd start off with a couple different pieces here. The first one is just based around this. There's a saying that if you want to eat an elephant, how do you do it? One bite at a time. No matter how big the issue is.
I thought you can talk about elephant ears because I've had those before. They're very tasty.
The temptation, to eat too many.
One bite at a time.
It's just the way you start anything, with one digestible step at a time. And so I think there's two pieces to it, though. The first is routine. You have to find a place in your schedule, in your family's life and rhythm, where it fits. Because if it doesn't fit, you're going to have to try and force it. And of course, that never works. Where is the space? Is it around a meal? Is it at bedtime? Is there a space over the weekend where you just book it in, it goes on the calendar in ink, and nothing takes its place? So routine is the first part. Make sure it's part of the schedule. The second piece is simplicity. Make sure it's something that's accessible for everybody in the family. And so there's lots of great apps online like YouVersion or Bible Gateway, all these different apps that offer ways and means for you to get engaged in simple practices, again, that fit your schedule, that fit everybody's level of maturity. Start there. Make it routine. Make it simple.
What should men get involved with in their church? Ushering, working their way up to maybe being an elder, like a leader within the church, leading a Bible study, maybe a cell group, a small group. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's important that what's happening in the church reflects the people who are part of the church. So if you have men who are mechanics in the church, make sure there's space for them to serve as mechanics and they get to contribute in areas of strength.
Their true gifting, right?
Their true gifting, exactly. And so that the ministries match the people. Whatever the needs that they can serve in the community are there. And so churches, I think, today need to be really creative about the kinds of ministries that they're creating. Don't default to some of the old ones. Just you usher, you serve in this area, you look after the grass. Make sure we're creating spaces for men to serve that match their design.
Now, as a pastor, you're also part psychologist.
Of course.
I mean, people come to you with a lot of their problems, married couples as well.
Yeah.
And have you noticed that men and women are wired a little bit differently? Let's talk a bit about that.
Yeah,
and the big differences that you've noticed.
Right, and I think some of the old tropes, even though they're just sort of stereotypical, I think they are true. Men, it does seem, whether it's nature or nurture, they seem to be wired with that warrior hunter mentality that's still there. And men, they're different than women. Women still seem to be a little more nurturing. They're just naturally better at it. Whatever forces are at work that make it so. And so men and women are different from each other, but there are also ways where we're all the same. We're just people. We struggle with the same things. Sexual temptation, for example, is not just a male problem. Right. It's a female problem. So we're different, and yet we're the same.
You know, I find it very interesting as well with my wife. Every time there's a problem, I have to find a solution. Let's solve this. Let's work on it. She says, no, let's just leave it for now. I'm like, no, we have to work on this now. You know, I don't know if you've noticed that as well with some
for
couples.
Sure. Yeah, and especially when the relationship problems, men want to fix or they disengage. If they don't know how to fix, then they don't even want to be present. And so it's tough to find that place where both men and women, husband and wife, can come together and patiently work through something over a long period of time where it takes a lot of energy, a lot of patience to see the fruit grow from it.
So the Southern Alberta Men's Ministry, the annual conference is coming up. Mid-City Church this Friday and Saturday. Again, I'm very blessed to be your MC for this. Yeah. Let's share with our viewers again what we can look forward to seeing and any cost for tickets and where do we pick them up?
Yeah, well, we're very blessed to have you there to MC the evening. Friday evening, Saturday morning. Tickets are available online. You can go to Facebook, go to the Southern Alberta Men's Ministry Facebook page, and there's a link there you can click to buy tickets from Eventbrite site. Easiest way, they're $25 per person. There's a discount for kids that are teenagers. Importantly, that comes with that, there are lots of great sponsors that are handing out coupons, that are making things available, that bonuses just for being there. We also have a wing night, nacho night Friday night that Fat Burger's putting on for us. They've really come to the table on this. It'll be fantastic. You're going to get your value back and then some just by showing up and being there. We want to make sure every man that wants to go will be there. So even if you can't afford the $25, show up. We're going to find someone that can buy that ticket for you.
How about fathers bringing their sons?
Brilliant idea. Fathers, bring your sons. Do that. Make it happen.
Love it. So any final words of encouragement for the men who are watching today, Pastor Joel?
Yeah, the same words that I think apply to everybody, but especially in this day, in this age, in this context, our part of the world. Men, your lives count for something. Don't be passive with the one and only life you have. Figure out a way to begin getting engaged. And so that's, again, what the conference is about. Step one, figure out where your place is, and then show up. Guys, the world needs you more than ever.
Michael W. Smith had that song, My Place in This World. I still remember that one indeed. Pastor Joel Klemick with Miz City Church in Lethbridge, thanks a lot for joining me in studio today.
Thanks again for having me. It's been great.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and have a great night.